Amazing news. It's the first time a man has died after being bitten by a sea snake in Australian history. Also, Excalibur has been pulled from a lake in Sweden, and bots cannot influence elections. I go by the name of Johnny Massacre, and you're witnessing the Johnny Massacre Show. That actually hurt quite a lot. This is the second Johnny Massacre show I've done today because the last one just turned into this political clusterfuck where I was ranting about politics. Yeah, it happens. So, look, let's keep this short and sweet because I have to roast a fucking chicken, make a curry, eat the curry, go for an hour run, head to my girlfriend's place, all by the time it's time for the last train, which in Japan is about midnight, and now it's nearly 10, so it's going to be brutal. I've got to whiz through this. So look, someone's been bitten by a sea snake and someone has died. This happens to be on Australian, which makes it slightly less severe. If you know anything about me and my show, you know I've had a little bit of beef with Aussies. I've had the beef with the Aussies, though it doesn't matter if they die. Just joking. A human life, regardless of where you're from, is invaluable. So let's have a look at this rather sad news about a man being killed by a sea snake. Here's the sea snake in question. No, actually, that's just a random picture. But the BBC tells us a British man has died after being bitten by a sea snake on a fishing trawler in Australia. The man, 23, thought to be a backpacker, had just pulled up off a net off the coast of the Northern Territory when he was bitten about 9 a.m. local time on Thursday. Emergency crews were called to the boat near Island Gurut Elant, but were unable to save the man. It may be the first recorded death from a sea snake in Australia. That's hard to believe, considering Australia is a festering hellhole full of dangerous wild animals, insects and sea creatures. I simply refuse to believe this is the first time in recorded history that a man has died at the teeth of a fucking sea snake, mate. But who knows? Who knows? Let's get back to the article. The man's body was taken to the mainland town of Borroloola on Thursday. Northern Territory police said a post-mortem would be conducted. So he was tragically unlucky apparently. Sea snakes are highly venomous, but because of their limited contact with humans, bites are relatively rare. Thank God Australia is home to 30 of 70 known species, according to the Australian Institute of Marine Science. By and large, they're very gentle animals, and people do go scuba diving with them all the time, said an expert. But in a fishing trawler situation where they've been potentially dragged through the water in a net, they will come up injured and perhaps looking to lash out. According to research published last year, snakes were responsible for 27 deaths in Australia between 2000 and 2013. So how do I feel about this? It's kind of sad. Whenever a fellow Brit dies, I'm never happy, or anyone dies for that matter, and dying at the hands of a poisonous animal is so shit. I can't really think of a much worse way to go. Imagine being bitten and then suddenly realizing that you're in trouble, and then your breathing's restricted, and then you just snuff it. That would be awful. Imagine you were on a family holiday in Australia, which I'm guessing this guy might have been, and then someone in your family gets bitten by a poisonous animal. I mean, it's nightmare stuff. It's like something out of a movie, so it's not great to hear this news. Of course, the man has died, but I'm fascinated with poisonous animals. Ever since I was a kid, I've been fascinated by them, and I think a lot of people are, because they're mysterious. There's something, especially British people, never come into contact with, but they're real. They're out there. Reality is sometimes stranger than fiction, so I find this news article kind of interesting. There's a lot of animal-related news on the Johnny Massacre show for some reason. I guess I'm just living out all my childhood interests. In other news, Excalibur has been pulled from a lake, that famous sword that can like cut anything. Actually, it's not really Excalibur, but some 8-year-old girl has found an ancient sword in a lake in Sweden. Can you fucking believe it? Well, believe it, people. Here's the news article, again on the BBC. Girl 8 pulls 1500-year-old sword from a lake in Sweden. Her name is Saga, apparently, or maybe Saga, but I'm going to call her Saga just for the sake of time. The sword was initially reported to be 1,000 years old, but experts at the local museum now believe it may date to around 1,500 years old. It's not every day that you step on a sword in the lake, Michael Nordstrom from the museum said. I felt something in the water and lifted it up. Then there was a handle, and I went to tell my dad that it looked like a sword, Saga told the radio broadcaster. So now the sword is at a local museum, and apparently it's very well preserved. The interesting point from this article, it comes at the end where it says, now the museum has gone back to the area to conduct further excavations, and they found a brooch from the 3rd century. And they said that they're not finished excavating the area. Now, 2 things spring to mind. Firstly, do they get any money for finding this fucking sword, or is it property of the state? Because if I found a 1,500-year-old fucking sword in a lake, I want some motherfucking money for that shit. And if it does belong to the state, then if you take it to the museum, is it legal? Are you legally obliged to hand this fucking thing over? Because if that was the case, I'd keep it on the black market and flog it to some kind of gangster shady type. If they did get money for it, how much do they get? And what's the bargaining process? That's quite interesting. And what I found interesting was the museum went back to this site to find more shit. Now, you know what? If I got money for that sword, I would be like, hey, I know the site where this came from, and there's probably more stuff down there. I will tell you where it's from if you promise to give me a 20% cut of all future historical excavations. So I hope that's what they did when they worked out the deal. More random news from the universe. And finally for today, bots cannot influence elections. If you think this, you are stupid. Because go onto YouTube and you will very quickly discover that the public are actually smarter than they appear. They can call out bullshit like that. When they see a movie with stupid identity politics like Ghostbusters and so on, the comments will just be rife with discontent. And while the people who made those products are keen to frame those people as racist and disgusting, terrible people to cover over their own failures, actually, the people are often right. And so we can call out the bullshit. And have you ever been tricked by a bot online? Maybe you don't know you've been being tricked, but come on now. There's no way Russians could orchestrate a campaign to not only create something themselves and not only trick people, but get them onto their side and sway the influence of an election or anything, sway the public opinion about a video game or a movie. But apparently it's automated, so it's not a person actually reacting to what you're saying and trying to trick you, which wouldn't work anyways. Who could do that? You'd have to be a complete evil genius of James Bond theatrical levels. But actually, all these messages are automated. They're made up. You think people are looking at automated messages in English made by Russians that are swaying an election? So people read something and then they go home and they go, oh, well, I read this news and that is bad, so now I'm going to vote for Hillary or something like that. It just doesn't happen like that. Even the most powerful politicians in the world with millions of dollars of funding cannot get through people's bullshit radar. People call out all the time. So how the fuck is Russia going to orchestrate this clandestine campaign to sway elections or influence things with bots like Star Wars and anything? If you actually think that, you will just believe anything to fit your predetermined conclusion that you have not tried to disprove in a pragmatic, almost scientific way, which is rather necessary for most arguments. So bots cannot influence elections. Let me draw your attention to something in the Daily Mail where they talk about this shit. Here we go. Daily Mail. Twitter is failing to stop fake news. 80% of accounts blamed for spreading lies during the 2016 election are still active weeks before the midterms. Oh my God, there's some people out there saying some shit that's political, and the poor, pathetic, idiotic people might read it and then they'll be brainwashed. You cannot police stuff like this. All you have to do is run a good, honest campaign and offer the people something nice, and no amount of trolling or automation will be able to throw a spanner in the works. This is funny. Is this really happening? Am I in a dream and I'm going to wake up tomorrow and realize that actually people are not blaming all their failures on Russian bots? It's so fucking weird. Look, that's all I have to say about that for now. So, yeah, I think it's time to talk about my life. Wow, I'm like a ninja. In that short space of time, I ran over to my oven and I extended the time for my chicken to be cooking. So, what is going on in my life? Well, obviously not very much, since I have to read what I've written down to know what's happening in my life. Well, sleep. I was going to talk about sleep and how fucking important sleep is, especially if you're doing a lot of training, but I'm kind of pressed for time, so let me tell you. So, I love my girlfriend. She's a lovely girl and I support her in everything that she does. So right now she's kind of doing some business stuff and I like to support her. So I just want to be with her at this time. So I'm going to go to her place tonight. And yeah, time is ticking away. It's 10 o'clock. I've got to cook this fucking chicken. That's going to take like an hour. Then it's going to be 11. Then I have to go for an hour run. And then I have to get the last train. Basically, I'm fucked. I don't know how I'm going to pull this off, go for a run, eat my fucking chicken. This is a man's world and a man's problems. How am I going to run? How am I going to eat the chicken? How am I going to hunt? How am I going to gather? This is what the fuck is going on in my life at the moment. Now, as for the mailbox, Charlie Herrera, my man Charlie on Twitter, which is, I've got to find his Twitter name. That would be disrespectful not to say it. It's, his middle name, I think, is Eugene. So it's Eugene_Charlie. He asks, is synth as a genre in music growing in Japan? No, it's not. Japan only cottons onto things that are massive worldwide trends, and synthwave is a little bit too culty to catch on here. If you were a 90s kid, you might like it, whether you're Japanese or American. So maybe the 90s kids, the Japanese 90s kids might eventually cotton onto it because it is quite an online visual thing as well. But as of yet, no, synth is, as a genre, is not growing in Japan as far as I know, and neither is synthwave or vaporwave. Charlie also asks, does some of the youth of Japan still admire its imperial history and wish for its revival? No, they don't give a fuck. They just forgotten all about it. And now it's been assimilated by America, and here I am. So I think some of the old people, of course, like any old people, that it's better in their time and they want to keep things the way they were. But yeah, mate, you are unlucky that the last Johnny Massacre show has been cut for this part, because I went on a massive rant here. Do you know what? I might fucking edit that and release that on the weekend, just to give you, I hate this word, a tidbit of Johnny Massacre show this weekend. But that's all I have to say about that for now. Finally, Charlie asks, what's Japan's view on immigration in Israel? I'm going to save that until this little snippet this weekend. But basically, it is the policy that Trump wants to implement. It's already implemented here. And Japan is actually really fucking great. So this should be an interesting conversation. Now, I should always do 2 Johnny Massacre shows and scratch the first one, because it gives me good practice. I kind of know what I'm talking about, and it's better. So I might spend a little bit more time practicing the Johnny Massacre show before I deliver it, so I don't waste my time. I went by the name of Johnny Massacre. You have been witnessing the Johnny Massacre show, and I will not see you tomorrow, because today is Friday and I don't do this on the weekends. I will see you on Monday. See you later.